Hello friends, welcome back to Innovations in Marketing and Marketing of Innovations. And we are going through a journey of innovations in integrated marketing communication. One of the most important elements of marketing mix and one of the most exciting elements of marketing mix. You see, what happens is that many a times people do consider integrated marketing communication as marketing, because not only it position or it enables the positioning of the products and services amongst the target audience, but also it enables the movement of goods in terms of when people start purchasing. It enables the satisfaction elements, it enables the loyalty elements and so on. And as I am using this word enablement, so you see it is a very important enabler as far as the whole situation goes. And that is the relevance of when we look for the scope of innovation in integrated marketing communication. And before we go for innovation within communication methods, which we would be touching upon and we slightly touched upon in the last session, we must talk about innovation separately amongst the methods, and I would be talking about the innovation between the methods or inter-method innovation. You may say that it is not a defined term, but one must say that how to use a particular combination of different kinds of methods, because you would realize at the end of the day integrated marketing communication is an expenditure, especially by the books, although it has specific returns and that those can be calculated and measured as well, but it has to be enumerated in terms of cost. So, when we are thinking in terms of innovation between innovation alongside, when we choose integration between the methods, then cost is a very important element, and we have been talking about reach and reach in time. So, once you have enabled the market and you are putting up a distribution here, and I would be talking about this when I would be focusing upon the concentricity of integrated marketing communication with reference to other P's, but just to give you a clue that when we are thinking in terms of reaching in time in distribution sense, so before that we have to reach to the customer in terms of the communication. So, reach in communication would definitely enable our strength for the reach in distribution as well, and then that thing comes back to us in terms of customer feedback and product innovation goes on, and then I'll be talking about that in due course of time. So, when we are talking of methods, it is very interesting. We must talk in terms of probable type of methods, types of methods of communication. What can be the methods of communication? Carrying a product to the customer by the organization itself through their sales team can be a statement of communication as well. And you see, this is where direct sales and direct marketing and those kind of things, they come in when we talk of distribution as well as communication. And I would be touching upon these elements in a sort of a systematic manner. But first we should be thinking in terms of, when we talk about probable types of methods of communication, we are always thinking in terms of types of messages. That is one part, and we have talked about that briefly, and message creativity, which I touched upon last time. And when we are talking of message creativity, then and definitely methods of message, then we are definitely thinking about so many things which enable the innovation which we are pursuing here. And you see, here comes the question of audience, who is the point of concern here, the target itself. And when we are talking about the targets, you would realize at the end of the day, when we are using a larger method of communication, not specifically one-to-one communication, then it is an important aspect which we realize that we are addressing large number of people through that communication. Probably that group, if it is homogeneous, reminds us of the segment which we are looking for. But on the other side, and it is slightly confusing, because on the other side when we are talking about micro segments and targets, then communication for a homogeneous group may may not enable the specific positioning we are looking for in terms of micro segments or targets. Now what to do? Here comes the need of integrated marketing communication. For going for example, going for a larger, wider, broader storyboard, and then taking it towards our micro segments through different methods. And that is where this innovation perspective comes in. But remember, whenever we are thinking in terms of communication innovation, this question would always be there. Whenever you would read about communication, whenever you would think about communication, when you would watch communication on televisions, you would see that that communication is actually addressing so many people. There you would always wonder that is it addressing, does the same communication addresses separate people with a separate kind of a connotation? We can be so much creative, we can be that much creative, but definitely it is a difficult task. So it is always better in terms of resorting to the integration of methods and starting from baseline and going for a wider kind of a thing. You may say that it can be a usual practice. No, it cannot be, because when we are going for a wider kind of a communication at the initial point on a mass level kind of a method which would be addressing so many people, at that time we have to create the scope for directing that communication for micro segments and targets. So route would be wider, but then it would be actually taking us towards different micro segments with a different kind of a connotation at the end of the day through different other methods which we would be utilizing. And here comes the scope of innovation in terms of as far as the whole situation goes. And that scope of innovation has to be created beforehand. That is where innovation in integrated marketing communication is very important, because we have to foresee that how these messages or this particular message which I am designing or structuring would traverse, and then how I would be actually delineating or bifurcating that or fragmenting that for different kinds of segments and targets at the end of the day. And that imagination has to have a very intense relationship with the positioning I want at the micro segments. Positioning can be broader at large when we are talking about, but then how micro segment would be looking at, let us say, the product line changes which I would be making. For example, I am talking of a shampoo. So if I have an anti-dandruff appeal which is associated with a larger kind of a connotation at the beginning, but then let us say anti-dandruff along with fragile hair, along with that, and that kind of a product line bifurcation has to traverse through this, through that, and so on. And that kind of an appeal has to be developed even till the levels of the purchase when customer would reach to the point of purchase, and that particular communication also should be associated with whatever I am talking from this side, and how I would be addressing an individual at the micro level. For example, bicycle, a very genuinely large based product, but then you decide on what types, what kinds, and when you reach to the point of purchase, then you are ending up purchasing a very specific bicycle which you find good for yourself. And then you see it's a very thin line, but we have to imagine this in almost all the product cases, and then we have to realize how this can be done. And you see at the end of the day, when we are visualizing this kind of a scope of innovation, to practice that I recommend that first imagine geographies. Now, geography has a homogeneity. For example, you have gone for a national kind of an advertisement related to a particular kind of a mobile phone, and then you are projecting that mobile phone for different kinds of geographies. How mobile phone would matter in terms of geographies? Well, mobile phone would have a backdrop in terms of usage in different areas with different kinds of perspective, not only because of the geographical constraint but also associated with the cultural constraint and so on. And you would say that I am talking of segmentation here. Yes, I am talking of a geographical fragmentation. When we are communicating about mobile phone would remain same but would be utilized for different kinds of purposes with different geographical and cultural connotation. And for let us say in Himalayas, communicating in times of bad weather and those kind of things and XYZ would be the mainstay in terms of as far as the usage of mobile phone goes. Signals would be weak and so on. So, a particular mobile phone which has a strong signal reception strength would be more handy in those areas. For that matter, any mobile phone would say that they have a good signal reception strength, but we all know the difference. So, that is the perspective a company can think in terms of. As far as a company can always project, for example, reaching with different kinds of services in the remotest of the areas in terms of the usage of that particular mobile phone goes. And when we are talking of consumer products, then definitely geographical fragmentation, and within geography fragmentation and reaching to the micro segments can be directed through specific communication, starting from a national campaign to geographical campaign to micro segments and segments at large. And at the end of the day, it is all about what micro segments or individual targets would aspire for, then what are their concerns, and what is the exposure they have gone for. And it is very interesting when we are talking of these kind of things, in terms of aspiration, concerns and exposure. All these three words, exposure actually will let them imagine or generate associative memory in terms of the product and the usage of the product. For example, I have been repeating this at n number of platforms, and both of my subjects in terms of product and brand management, integrated marketing communication especially, has this kind of a perspective around let us say education. Education, if can be seen as a product, then has different connotations in different geographies with different kinds of people basically. In a highly competitive urbanized kind of a university environment, people may think education to be directly associated with professions which can be positioned that way. But in a place where people would think in terms of education with the perspective of gaining knowledge and serving their local societies for betterment of the people around them, it might have different kind of a connotation and aspirational perspective. And that is why I say concern is actually the linking cord between the the aspiration as well as exposure. So, what kind of a concerns the targets they share, they have? Do boon zindagi ki. It is a wonderful campaign which Government of India went for in terms of eradication of polio. Polio was a menace, and I am so happy, and I have repeated that in almost all of my subjects, wherein you see India successfully eradicated polio. Wonderful thing basically. How? Do boon zindagi ki. You see, now again if you will look at concerns, exposure and aspiration, you would realize that for many people who have been administered with polio vaccine long back through their awareness and by virtue of being staying in those kind of areas wherein people are agile and they know about that, for them it is a usual kind of a thing. Then what's so special about not having polio vaccine? But where people did not know anything about that, and unfortunately someone would have faced that in due course of time, if you will look with the perspective of their families, then their concerns are extremely different. And that is precisely what Do Boon Zindagi Ki campaign went for, and Mr. Bachchan played a wonderful role when he said Do Boon Zindagi Ki. And you see, one of my favorite campaigns, and I have been talking about in other courses as well, हम चाहते हैं आपके अपने जल्द से जल्द घर वापस जाए. Your dear ones should go back home as early as possible. This is a hospital campaign by Max Health group, a wonderful campaign. Basically, you see a hospital telling you that you should go back home as early as possible. Now again, this concern, exposure and aspiration perspective comes in very handy in terms of this kind of innovation in communication. And these two campaigns, they have message innovation, and I will be talking of method innovation just after this. But look at these lines, lot of innovation, and as I said that it is a very small group of words, a simple line which we have to innovate upon in terms of as far as the message goes, and then we have to couple it up with lots of visuals and those kind of things wherein imagination comes in, and that is where innovation in terms of message creativity comes in. And to understand this, I would definitely urge you to go to different kinds of platforms and just search for advertisements and try to look into the creativity perspective with innovation perspective, how that message actually reached to the hearts of people. And then look at the words which they have been using. For example, saath. Now look at this word, saath, togetherness. Imagine, you see, do boon zindagi, the word is zindagi, life, and I have talked about that earlier as well. Jaldi wapas ghar jaye, go home soon. Going home soon is such an aspirational thought. Talk to people who are away from their homes, they definitely wish to go home back early. Home is a word which has an attraction of calling people back, and that is a very important kind of a thing. That is how this word called saath, togetherness, it comes in. And I am talking of message creativity and innovation. How to decipher this, how to say this so that it can be deciphered with reference to as far as the desire, the aspiration, concerns and exposure of your target customer goes. So the point is that why not to say something and go and show that, for example. Now here comes an innovation in terms of as far as message creativity, visual creativity associated with this saath. For example, you can just show two little hands holding each other, basically two children, and just on the screen two little hands holding each other and saath. And then you can say anything about mobile ka saath, your mobile phone is your sathi or your friend, or kind of you may talk about anything in terms of saath, togetherness. And then if you want to couple that with as far as choices of media goes, that becomes interesting. For example, if I am talking about saath and togetherness with the perspective of whatever products I am projecting, and the other day you find someone standing at your doorsteps and explaining that element of togetherness, expressed in that kind of an advertisement, and justifies that element of togetherness, that would be the most interesting thing. Somehow if you have created a movie around saath, for example, and the product is shown there somehow enabling togetherness, now that is also very interesting basically. Now that is where innovation in terms of message to methods traverses. And then you see, I can talk about this word togetherness on and on basically, because this is what you want. COVID-19 kind of situations has explained this at length to us. People who are out on the streets and walking back to their homes when COVID-19 erupted somehow, and we were trying to curtail the situation basically. You just ask them what kind of turmoil they went into when they were looking for going back home, and they were asking for togetherness, and on the streets they were together, and that was the togetherness for them basically. So you see, those kind of extreme situations, they explain to us that somehow these words they have lot of meaning and can be deciphered in lot many terms. So if somehow this can be explained by someone at your doorsteps, meaning can be generated as far as the words go through deciphering the words and along with methods, appropriate methods which would be utilized for enabling that delineation or meaningful determination which comes out of this word which you are saying through advertisement. Otherwise, it would be just a storyboard. People would receive it or might not receive it, and that is how this innovation comes into being. If Eureka Forbes is coming with an advertisement, basically Pani Ka Doctor, and the doctor comes to your home and explains why he is called Pani Ka Doctor, doctor of water, then you would understand, that somehow that meaning is being justified. So, the objective here is that making them believe actually in whatever you are believing in, and that is the most important element when we are talking of as far as this innovation in communication goes. But again the question is, and that is a $1,000,000 question, why would they believe what you want them to believe? And that is why my always, my suggestion is that stand by what you are saying and be innovative in standing by what you are saying. I talked about example of Disneyland few sessions back. Look into the kinds of services and the products Disneyland has, and look into the kind of communication they do. They talk about happiness, they talk about coming to them to gain happiness, and then they stand by those kind of things and they justify those kind of things, and they are extremely innovative in standing by those kind of things as far as the whole scenario goes. If I say that we are here for you with open arms, then if I am there with open arms, and that actually gets justified at the end of the day when you reach to a restaurant, for example, some restaurant or food chain is saying that, and it actually is felt that way, how innovative I can be in terms of justifying that feeling which you would gain, and that would traverse as far as the whole situation goes. That is where the belief kind of a thing generates. So, making them believe is actually related to how innovative you can be in terms of generating the message and deciphering the message, you see. And that is where I say that if I say this, that somehow it justifies what you think in terms of what I believe about my product, and somehow it gels with each other, that is where things come to fore as far as the whole scenario goes. And now to give you a contrast on this, if somehow we are not innovative enough, and I am giving few examples here, and I would be deciphering that in terms of different choices of methods in my next session, but if somehow we are not innovative enough in terms of, for example, Do Boon Zindagi Ki and the methods and associated methods, and Pani Ka Doctor and Doctor of Water, and going to their homes and justifying that, and Saath, togetherness, and going to their homes and justifying that, if we are not innovative enough in this kind of a process, then there is lesser acceptance. So, I am raising this point of lesser acceptance for you to realize that somehow if you are observing this about some products around, then the earlier discussion has not the earlier part which we have discussed has not been justified in the case of these products. Many products are vanishing off the shelves. Many movies are just going, coming and go. Many movies, they stay for n number of years. I was watching this documentary somewhere, and I realized that one of the movies, or many of the movies in fact, they ran for long number of years in a few cinema halls in Mumbai, and one of the movies I think by Yash Raj Films ran for 20 plus years, basically in one single cinema hall with so many people watching that movie. I immediately realized that the communication about that movie, the perspective around that movie, the positioning of stars related to that movie in their future movies, the positioning of Yash Raj Films in association with that movie, the the communication about that movie, communication within that movie, and communication beyond that movie, everything got gelled so much that customers remained with that movie, people repeatedly watched that movie, and it ran on and on for 2 decades plus. It's a life changer kind of anyone, for anyone, for a production house, for a director, producer, or for a film star, or even the story writer, everyone who is associated with that kind of a movie. It's sort of, kind of a pivotal kind of a thing basically. If you create such kind of a movie as a product which runs for 2 decades or so, I wouldn't have gone for anything else in my life after that. It's just like a fixed deposit that you have deposited a lot of money and you are just gaining interest out of that, and that is the brilliance of, in terms of communication or integrated marketing communication association with as far as these kind of products go. Even the songs, they act as a vehicle for integrated marketing communication in such movies, and that is where larger acceptance comes in, and this acceptance is on the basis of the innovation which we are referring to at this particular moment. If it is not there, it is lesser acceptance, and that is an important element which we have to realize as a testimony and as a measurement criteria for as far as the whole situation goes. And then just to give you a clue before I go for different methods of communication and innovation in terms of separate methods, and then innovation in terms of integration of those methods and logically building up the case around, just try and imagine that, for example, 15, 20, 30, 40 or large number of elephants are going on the street. They are carrying large beautiful banners around them about different kinds of products, and those elephants, they keep on walking from this city to that city, and somehow the distribution along with this kind of a communication, distribution of those products also carries forward. What kind of an attention would you gain about that kind of a product in terms of the product itself, the positioning of the product? When people are directly communicating with you, they are sitting on the elephants, and you have this kind of an attention span associated with which the elephant draws, and the message you are watching on that elephant, and the trials you are making in terms of the products, and somehow these words they get on evolving in due course of, or getting spread, that this company is moving around on elephants with the products and distributing those products and communicating about those products and so on, and the kind of lesser cost as compared to many other options which you would have chosen in due course of time. You see, just an innovative thought in terms of, and if this kind of method can be coupled up with an innovative creative message also, carrying saath, zindagi, togetherness, this kind of a connotation, kind of ye dil mange more, somehow, that kind of a connotation, if it is there, then this would create a lot of innovative perspective around, and reduction of cost, and a reach in time perspective would also be realized in due course of time as far as whole scenario goes. So that is what I want to emphasize in terms of relevance of message creativity along with the method creativity, and integration of message and method together to strengthen the whole kind of a process as far as reach to the customer and reach in time to the customer goes. And this has to be, this has to have lot of innovation in terms of the thought process to make the people believe what you believe in, but you must believe in what you are saying. I would be coming back to you with lots of insights in terms of different modes or methods, and then I would be deciphering methods individually as well as in association with each other. Till then, goodbye.